We live in a consumer society where our philosophy in life is I shop, therefore I am, and happiness is based on what you own. Everywhere we look, there are well-crafted messages that play with our psychology and convinces us to buy more and act now. We celebrate this culture, and it's built into all of our holidays, with gifting becoming the show of love and care. We even have its own holiday we call Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, where all stores give out huge discounts, and this happens. So why am I talking about consumerism when this is supposed to be about the ecological impact of fashion? Because in order for me to talk about the impacts, we have to first understand it is the mindset of the collective that has led us to where we are today. So to tackle this environmental and humanitarian mess, we have to start from ourselves, understanding our mindset and shifting it. The fashion industry as we know it consists of these main components. The ones that consumers are most familiar with are the ones on the right: distribution and retail, and usage and disposal. It looks so simple, doesn't it? The reality behind it is that fashion is made up of many other industries that range from electricity and heat, agriculture, livestock, road transportation, and oil and gas production. The full picture is much more complicated and dirtier than it seems, with each part of the chain having its own major issues. And here's a graphic view of what that looks like from the very left, from cultivating and growing crops to textile factories, bleaching, packaging, to shipping, to eventual disposal. And we, as innocent and unconscious consumers, are expanding the industry's problem through the help of technological advancements like super easy shopping portals, personalized commercialization, and as economists would call it, globalization. To give you in perspective, 98% of our clothing is now made abroad, and compared to the 1960s, we buy 2.5 times more than we did before. Yet, somehow, when you look at our happiness level, it's barely moved from where we were 50 years ago. The average American family spends about $1,700 on clothes annually and throws away 70 pounds of clothing per person. Only 15% of all consumer-used clothing is recycled. Of those that are recycled, 45% are resold and shipped abroad, which disrupts the local economy in developing countries. For example, in Uganda, where more than 80% of all clothing purchased are secondhand discards from the West. All the meanwhile, in the other half of the globe, where population is dense and labor is cheap, we have the factories and workers of fashion. They're the legs of what we call fast fashion today, the clothing equivalent of fast food, and they're based on 3 keys: cheap, fast, and trendy. Large orders and tight deadlines lead to overtime, overcrowded, and unsafe conditions, such as buildings with no fire exits. And that leads to tragic incidents like the Rana Plaza in 2013, where 1,135 workers were killed and 2,500 others injured. Incidents like this happen on the regular basis, never gets featured on news. 1 in every 6 of the world population working in some parts of it. With the vast majority of garment workers being female, 98% of them are not receiving a living wage. These are some of the retailers and brands that sourced from Rana Plaza. As you can see, Walmart, JCPenney, The Children's Place, just to name a few. The more we purchase, the more profit these companies make. Yes, they create jobs, but the labor costs overseas are less than 1% of the retail price. So it's really only benefiting the ones on top of the chain. The founder of Zara was the richest person on the planet, not Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, heads of big oil or tech companies, but the head of a fast fashion chain. So on top of violating human rights and promoting unsustainable consumer behaviors, the fashion industry is also the second most polluting after the oil industry. If we continue with our current system at this rate, soon our magazine covers will look like this. And I'm sure that the marketing of the future will be really creative in making us think this is the new trend, but the reality is this: climate change is undeniable. 16 of the top 17 hottest years in modern record have occurred since 2000. Hurricanes, earthquakes, and wildfires are becoming more and more frequent on the news. We have to start making the connection between these disasters with our daily actions, because I know personally, as a citizen of the country that serves as the world's factory, China, this is the consequences we bear and the reality I face every time I go home. It breaks my heart seeing how people are still in denial of where things are heading. It's time to reveal the reality of this glamorous and seemingly innocent industry, and we will start with the obvious: air pollution. There are many processes involved with producing textile. As you can see, there are many life-threatening pollutants are left untreated that contaminates the air. Fabric finishing operations can release formaldehyde into the air, and without EPA safeguards, these toxic vapors would remain suspended in the air and can be carried by the wind to pollute other areas. And like I said, 98% of our clothes are imported. They come from mainly China, Vietnam, and Bangladesh. These countries primarily run on coal-based power grids. The apparel industry accounts for 10% of the world's total carbon footprint. To give you a perspective, that is 5 times more than all airline travel combined. Not to mention, the synthetic materials that we're producing are highly energy intensive, and almost as energy intensive as it is chemically intensive. Textile pollution is accountable for being the second largest polluter of fresh water globally, with 90% of dye houses in developing countries releasing directly into local freshwater supply. And the problem with this is that these chemicals cannot be removed once released. The more treatments and processes there are, the more likely mistakes happen that creates irreversible damages. Did you know that more than 14,000 dyes and chemicals are used in producing our clothing? Along the way comes with large amounts of toxic and non-toxic wastes, like leftover dyes in containers, scrap metal, and wastewater sludge, which ends up in landfills, which contaminates the soil and eventually leaches into our groundwater. With more than half of our fibers made with man-made synthetic materials, 95% of them are polyester, made with plastic, which is non-biodegradable, non-breathable, highly energy intense, and releases microplastic into our ecosystem.
What do you think when you hear the word polyester? 70s leisure suits? Sweaty smelling dress shirts? That's what polyester used to be. These days, everybody wears it. Yoga pants, fleeces, even underwear, all made from synthetic fabrics like polyester. More polyester means more demand for the stuff used to make polyester. But you don't have to use new stuff to make it. Some companies are making polyester out of old stuff, plastic bottles, in fact. Every day, the world throws away billions and billions of plastic bottles. That's a problem. Of course, the real solution is that we all use less plastic. But it's cool that even while we work to reduce plastic, some companies are turning trash into stuff we actually like. Drink it, drop it in the bin, take it to a recycling factory, chop it up, weave it, wear it, wash it, wear it again, wash it again. Seems like a great solution, right? But darn, when we look closer, there are some real problems with this. The big problem is that some people might be encouraged to use more disposable plastic if they think it's being recycled safely. But there's also a little problem, a micro problem that's adding up to one big mess. Every time we wash synthetic fabrics, whether they're made from recycled bottles or brand new materials, super tiny pieces of plastic, called microfibers, wash off and flow down the drain. Up to hundreds of thousands each wash. The older our clothes get, the worse the problem can become. Yikes! These fibers are so tiny, water treatment plants don't catch them all, so they wind up in rivers, lakes, and even the ocean. When they reach the ocean, they act like sponges, sucking up other pollutants around them. They're like little toxic bombs full of motor oil, pesticides, and industrial chemicals that end up in the bellies of fish, and eventually in the bellies of us. It's gross. It's already estimated there are 1.4 million trillion in our oceans. That's like 200 million microfibers for every person on the planet. These are some serious downsides to what looked like a good solution. Time for these creative companies to go back to the drawing board. Because while we can wash our clothes less or avoid buying synthetic clothing, we can't solve the problem without them. And if we want these companies to make it a top priority, they need to hear from you. Let's find a real solution to make our clothes safe for the environment, safe for the ocean, and safe for us.
So now that we have a basic understanding of the problems behind plastic clothes, you might think, well, I guess I'll only buy cotton from now on, and that would solve the problem. And I really wish there was a magic bullet to this problem, otherwise I wouldn't even be giving this presentation. Unfortunately, cotton, the world's most popular natural fiber, also has a significant impact on the environment, namely because how chemical and water intensive it is. Let's take a look at what's involved in making and wearing your cotton t-shirt. So what else is involved besides using synthetic and natural materials? Well, with that, I have to start with the leather industry because of its prevalence and wide usage in fashion. They're everywhere, and they're highly prized as a symbol of status in our society. This belief the collective subscribe to is creating the continual boom in the leather industry, with its annual worth more than $77 billion. China and India are the leading suppliers of processed leather, mainly because there are loose regulation on animal rights. Brutal practices like rubbing chili peppers into cows' eyes as they march towards their slaughterhouse are common practices. Leather can be made from cows, pigs, goats, and even dogs and cats, and they're often intentionally mislabeled before shipping abroad, making it close to impossible to identify what animal your leather is made of. The practice of tanning leather is basically dipping animal skin into pools of chemicals that prevents it from decomposing. Uneducated workers with no equipment can end up with skin, respiratory, and reproductive cancer like this. Another popular material used in fashion: fur. Fur from sheep, rabbits, minks, seal, you name it. If the animal's pretty, we pretty much want to wear it. More than half of the fur in the US comes from China, where it's often mislabeled and extremely difficult to regulate. Countries depend on the fur industry to support their economy, with Canada being an example with their annual commercial seal hunt, supported by the government. Another example is New Zealand's wool industry. It is estimated that 90% of New Zealand's methane emissions come from their sheep. Wool is one of the worst in terms of overall chemical impact because of how much water and chemical it requires. And last but not least are the birds and insects. We use feather for everything, as decoration and insulation on our coats and in our beddings. Down is the softest layer of feathers closest to bird's skin in the chest region. As you can see in this image, Feathers and down are pulled from each bird every 6 weeks from when they are mature to when they are incapable of producing. The struggling birds are often plucked so hard that their skin is torn open with no painkillers to help them heal. Insects are also used in fashion. For instance, silk is a fiber that silkworms weave to make cocoons, and to obtain silk, you have to boil or steam the worms alive inside their cocoons. Approximately 3,000 silkworms are killed to make every pound of silk. In summary, the fashion industry is built on abuse of the workers, animals, and the planet, and creates problems of habitat destruction, food insecurity, health crisis, and climate change. The thing is, we cannot consume our way to a more sustainable world. Our linear system of take, make, dispose needs a fundamental shift. And that shift starts with each individual, you and me together as consumers with our voice. And so now we move on to solutions. What can we do about this mess? As much as I support signing petitions and urging industries to change, which is absolutely needed to fix our system, I also believe in the equal responsibilities as consumers of taking personal actions on a regular basis. Here is a to-do list of what you can do starting from today. Number 1, don't vote for more clothes to be made and choose to buy secondhand clothes. Number 2, know what your clothes are made of. Make sure you check the tags. Are the materials synthetic or natural, or does it contain animal products? And where is it made in? You can pretty much tell the condition of the workers based on the country it is made from. Number 3, which is the easy one, is to become more aware of how many clothes you buy and cut down on the amount of clothes you buy. Pick quality over quantity and think in cost per wear. Number 4, love what you own and be proud of them. Love and care for your clothes because details matter. Number 5, use the dryer less and conserve energy. Number 6, rather than being a trend follower, be a trendsetter. Number 7, learn more about the topic and share with other people. Talk to people about your secondhand clothes and the story behind your clothes. Number 8, talk to people about your fashion choices. Bring love and values into your conversations and help more people connect the dots. Be curious and ask questions. There are plenty of tools online that can help you identify which products are inhumane and toxic. And lastly, dress for change and show other people that you care. What do you dress for? Thank you for watching this video, and I hope this presentation has been informational, helpful, and hopefully inspirational. If you're interested, please click on the top right corner for additional inspiration from my secondhand fashion catalog, where I'm the model and the director. You will also find more details of my story and my inspiration behind this project. Please feel free to leave comments below and ask me any questions that you have.